Hello, horror fans. Welcome back to Jay versus Horror. I'm your host, Jay Wall. Tonight, guys, we are taking on our top 10 animal attack horror films, and we have a very special guest with us, Bo Ransdell. How's it going, Bo?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me here. I've really been looking forward to this for weeks because I had the delay. So now I'm here and I could not be more thrilled.
So tell the people out there all the stuff that Bo Ransdell is working on right now.
Uh, I like talking about myself in the third person. Makes me feel like Navin R. Johnson. Who is Bo Ransdell? No, people may know me because I wrote a slasher movie called Lost After Dark. I'm also the editor in chief of a horror website and group of podcasts called Legion Podcasts. You can find that at legionpodcasts.com. And I do a bunch of movie and horror related podcasts. I have a bunch of people that I work with on the network that all do kind of weird and fun shows, and I kind of try to shepherd some of those. And yeah, so legionpodcast.com is kind of the big thing. We also have our YouTube channel, Legion Podcasts, and it's just like what you do, only we have a bunch of other knuckleheads doing it too. And it's just kind of talking about the movies that we love, and some of the shows take it from a political slant, and some of the shows are kind of weird history and urban legends and that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of fun, man. I'm so like proud and lucky to kind of work with a bunch of people that all want to do podcasts that are a little bit different. They're not all the same stuff, and I love that.
All right, guys. Now we want you to get the full Bo Ransdell experience. So we're going to take Bo's information. It's all going to be in the description to this video so you can check out anything he's working on. And let's get started. Uh, Animal attack films, Bo. We decided to throw out Jaws because that's the obvious number one. And it's so the obvious number one, it's kind of overbearing. It's like we wouldn't even be talking about this without Jaws, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I think that there are some roots in sort of those 50s sci-fi monster movies. There's a hint of that in those days, but Jaws is it's just one of the best movies that was ever made. And so when you're talking about like a specific subgenre like the animal attack movies, it's like most of these movies are kind of clones of Jaws. It's best of type. It is sort of the platonic ideal of what these movies ought to be. And yeah, so it like we have to talk about it, but also putting it on our list is kind of no fun because it would absolutely be on both of our lists.
Right. And so we threw that one out. We thought that was fair. And I'm going to start with my number 10 film because that way I go last and you go first. You'll go, excuse me, I go first. You will go last. You are the guest.
All
So
right.
at number 10, I have The Breed. It's a 2006 horror film. And I like this one a lot. It's about these people who are, trapped on a deserted island, and there used to be a genetic institute there that enhanced dogs to kill people. And I hate movies that kind of give certain animals a bad rap, but I think this one takes it into the sci-fi realm enough where you don't really blame it on the dogs, you blame it on the people who made the dogs this way, right? And
Yeah.
so it's a fun movie, though. It's got a lot of like action horror sequences in it where these people are trying to basically come up with ways to avoid the dogs instead of having confrontations with them, which is not going to work out well for anybody, right? So, yeah, The Breed from 2006, that's what I had for number 10.
All right. I'm immediately breaking one of your rules. In my number 10 slot, which is this is sort of out of the realm of distinct possibility, even though they give you a dumb science reason for it. But this goes back to the 50s and my love of the movie Them, which is all about giant ants.
Right.
And as a kid, I stumbled across this movie. I'm certainly not old enough to have been alive when this movie was released or anything. But I stumbled across this movie when I was a kid, and it caught my imagination. I've loved it ever since. I still think it is a high watermark for practical effects of the time. Some of those giant ants look legit scary. And at one point, Jay, just to tease the listeners a little bit, at one point, a dude takes a flamethrower to giant ants, and it's all done practically, and you all see it catch fire. It's amazing. And it's a really interesting, like there were an absolute ton of those kind of nuclear panic movies in the 50s with giant bugs and stuff like that. Them is sort of the Jaws of those. It's really the best of all of those. And it's kind of, if not the most logical, it at least takes the subject matter seriously and it's not schlocky, you know? But I love it. I'm such a fan of them.
I like that one a lot too. And when I was a kid, Grandpa Munster used to do a double feature on TBS where he hosted horror films, and he always did schlocky old ones. And I probably saw them at least 5 or 6 times just watching Grandpa Munster. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Great pick.
Yeah. It's so good. All right. So back at you. What you got?
At number 9, I have a little film from 1986 called Fair Game. I think it's actually from 1985. There's uh, some conversation about whether it's from 85 or 86, but the movie is about, it stars Greg Henry, and it's about a guy who is a games developer, but at the same time, he likes to play games with people, and he has a falling out with his ex-wife, and he decides to obtain a black mamba that is in the middle of its mating season. And when the black mamba is in its mating season, if it doesn't expel its venom within like an hour or something, it toxifies itself and kills itself. So there's a lot of incentive for it to bite someone other than just, the random incident where it might bite someone. And so he unleashes this black mamba into her apartment building, which he has messed with because that's what he does, and locks her down inside of it with this black mamba. And it's about like an hour of real time where she's avoiding this snake and trying to figure out how to subdue it and keep it from reading her heat signature and all this kind of stuff. But it's got a really great opening too, where, because you're thinking in your mind, you're like, okay, so how does one go about obtaining a black mamba snake in its mating season without,
Mm-hmm.
getting a knock on the door from the FBI? And that's where Bill Moseley comes into the story. He plays this goofy guy who goes and obtains this snake and never really questions the fact that this is kind of a weird situation and people might not want to be connected to him. And that ends in a very fun way too. So yeah, I had Fair Game at number 9. I like that one a lot.
That reminds me of a movie I saw years ago that I think also involved a black mamba, only this time it was Oliver Reed, and the movie was called Venom.
Yes, it also has Klaus Kinski in it, right?
That's right. That's right. It sounds better on paper than it really is, but
Yes.
it is an interesting movie of that time for sure. So, all right, my number 9 here is gonna be the original Piranha, the Joe Dante classic. Again, slightly fudged, because genetic experiments and whatnots on piranhas. But any movie that has a great Dick Miller performance, some genuinely good child murder, which always kind of still shocks me when I see it in a movie of like, oh my god, those fish are eating those kids. Um, and just kind of a general air of campiness. You've got a great, is it Bradford Dillman, I think, who is the lead in that. There's just a ton of like weird side characters. There's the old man who gets et by the piranhas, and his dog has to kind of lead the friends to his ultimate fate and all that kind of thing. It's so much fun. Like, Piranha is a ridiculously fun B animal attack movie.
I like it a lot too. Yeah, and I agree. It's scary as hell when you're a kid and you see that, because they do the blood in the water scene and all the bubbling in the flesh, and you're like, ah, like it instantly registers in your mind as like, if I ever go to the jungle, I'm gonna make sure the first thing I ask is, are there any piranhas anywhere near here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, But yeah, just a great pick there. I like that one a lot.
All right, you're number 9, sir.
I think I am at number. Am I at number 9?
Oh no, you're at 8. I'm sorry
Right.
because you
Yeah,
went
I'm at
first.
number
I
8.
apologize.
Yeah. At number 8, I have Burning Bright. Now, this is one a lot of people haven't seen. It's from 2010. It was directed by Carlos Brooks and it stars Brianna Evigan, who a lot of people will remember from some of those Step Up movies, and Garrett Dillahunt, who's a very underrated actor, right? He's been in a ton of stuff, Deadwood, all kinds of stuff, Raising Hope. Meatloaf is in this too, and Charlie Chahan also plays a part here. He doesn't get to speak a lot, but he's in the movie. Uh, in the movie, Kelly and her younger brother, we see like they're trapped in this house by this tiger because their douchebag stepdad, played by Garrett Dillahunt, decides he wants to open like a roadside safari. That's a normal thing for a stepdad to do, right? And he takes their inheritance that their mother has left them and buys a tiger from Meatloaf. And this tiger, Meatloaf tells him like this tiger is intense, man. It's mean.
Right.
And
This ain't like a house tiger. You got to
right.
keep an
Yeah.
eye on
He's
the
like,
snake.
I don't know if you know what you're doing here, but you got the money. He tells him that like the tiger got kicked out of a circus. I didn't know you could get kicked out of something like as an animal, but he got kicked out of the circus because he attacked one of the horses in one of the shows and tried to eat it and the performer that was with it. And the guy's like, okay, well, that's fine. I need a tiger. You know what I mean? So he takes it back to the house, and his plan is to tie it up in the barn while it's sedated and lock the barn up. And then, he's your typical douchebag stepdad that Garrett Dillahunt would play with that kind of accent. He heads off to the bar in town, of course, and then a wicked storm hits. And of course, the tiger gets free. It gets in the house. The stepkids are in the house. And, it's all about the daughter, Brianna Evigan. She's protecting the young kid. I was talking about Charlie Tahan. He's autistic and he can't really talk or even, defend himself properly in this situation. There's a tiger on the loose. Some of the problems with the film, I guess, is like, they went the cheap route a couple times, and when they're showing the tiger, they just do like a close up of the eyes, and you can tell that like they could have got that from anywhere and matched it to their footage, and it's not like a real tiger's roaming around a lot of the time, so it loses a little bit with that, but all in all, I thought it was very good, and it's got a great plot. And stick around for the end because there's a huge twist to this movie, if you can believe it or not. Yeah, Burning Bright at number 8.
See, this is why I'm not only a subscriber, I'm a fan. Because you're right, Garrett Dillahunt is an underrated actor. And also, this was on my list until like it was on there and got shuffled down. But Burning Bright is a really great animal attack movie. And it's one of the newer ones that was on my list. And you're right. I think it suffers a little bit from that. Hey, we've got some footage of a tiger stuff, but there are a handful of scenes that are like, damn, they got that tiger to, you know, give a performance from time to time.
Right.
So yeah, that's a great pick.
So what do you got for number 8?
Mine is Kingdom of the Spiders, rounding out my ooh, get it off me phase of my list. Um, so the Kingdom of the Spiders is an old William Shatner joint where he plays the sheriff of a sleepy town in the desert, and one of the locals finds a couple of cows dead because they have been poisoned and eaten by tarantulas. And so it follows the typical rules of these movies where you call in the expert, and the expert comes in and is like, yeah, tarantulas shouldn't be doing this shit. So this is probably a problem, and probably DDT, by the way. And then a bunch of tarantulas just go ape shit and start killing people in this town. And it has one of the grimmest and I would argue coolest endings of any movie I saw when I was cutting my teeth on horror films. And the ending has stuck with me to the point that a buddy of mine got me like a lithograph of that final. It's just a matte painting that ends the movie, but it's one of the best matte paintings that's ever been. So yeah, Kingdom of the Spiders, I love dearly.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I'm a fan of William Shatner. I can't help it. I love even his performance in Visiting Hours from '82, where he's not
Yeah,
really doing anything but just kind of being there, being the boyfriend. He's still pretty fun. Uh,
yeah,
Great in Kingdom of the Spiders. That's a great pick, and I like how you're kind of. I'm starting to see a trend here where you got some old school picks. I like that.
yeah. I most of them are fairly. They're kind of in the heyday of these movies, which is sort of that '70s and '80s era. But yeah, so let's hear your number seven.
At number seven, I have The Ghost in the Darkness from 1996. And, this one was directed by Stephen Hopkins. It stars Val Kilmer. Don't be detracted, people. This is 90s Val Kilmer, not, Val Kilmer now where he's almost like in a Busey mode or something. I don't know what's going on with him now. But yeah, he was a big star in the 90s. And it also has Michael Douglas, who's a huge star through every decade, I guess. And the screenplay was written by William Goldman. And it's a fictionalized account of the Tsavo man-eaters, two Tsavo lions that attacked and killed workers at Tsavo, Kenya, during the building of the Uganda-Mombasa Railway in East Africa in 1898. So yeah, I mean, I guess the question here is how much of this is real and how much of it is fictionalized. Uh, the guy who this happened to said that these two lions ate 135 people. A lot of people went back and checked the reports and everything else, and they said no, it was probably more like 45 or something like that. But 45 people
Still a
being
lot.
eaten, yeah, that's a lot, and it will put 135 in your mind real quick, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, when you're talking about the number of people killed by tigers and
right.
lions, or yeah, lions in this case, right? If the number is more than say one, it's you got real trouble on your hands.
And in this one, Val Kilmer is the guy who's trying to figure out how he's going to build this railway with these two lions eating everyone who's working on it. And it's literally like people will, hey man, I need to go use the bathroom. They walk off three steps and they have been eaten by a lion and never seen again. And so he incorporates the help of Michael Douglas's character, which is basically just the Great White Hunter, right? That's who he's playing in this movie. And it's the movie. It's not particularly horror. I wouldn't say it's terrifying, but for me, it's one of those films. Like if you're in that situation, that's terrifying. That's like that USS Indianapolis situation where the sharks were eating people out of the water. I mean, like, is it really? Does it terrify you as a horror film? But no, maybe. But if you were in that situation, trust me, you'd be terrified, right? There is no scarier situation. So
Yeah,
yeah, at number seven, I had The Ghost in the Darkness from 1996.
yeah. See, that movie is pretty classy too.
Right.
Much more so than my next pick, which is Orca at my number seven, which is almost a direct ripoff of Jaws. Only there's a killer whale, and it's all mad because its baby was murdered by Richard Harris. And Richard Harris then is beset by this killer whale, and supermodel of the time, famed actress, kind of, Bo Derek is in it, playing a girl who eventually is going to get eaten by an orca. And I'm trying to remember who the lead actress is. Speaking of class and the join up, but Richard Harris is really good at it. He's, if you're not familiar with Richard Harris, he's kind of an Irish actor, uh, just as crusty as they come. He's a great screen presence, and him fighting this killer whale. And this kind of does the Bertie Bright thing of giving you close-ups of the orca eye every now and again, but it's like it's locking eyes with Richard Harris, forming a grudge, a blood debt, and the movie kind of goes crazy places. Like it ends with a man v orca battle in the frozen ice, and I don't know how you argue with that. That's entertainment. That's why people go to the movies.
Yeah, it's a great film. It's kind of got like a little Moby Dick in it. It's kind of got like a little old man in the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I love Richard Harris, man. He is a treasure. If you guys have not done this, go to YouTube, look up Richard Harris, and watch him his all his different clips of him talking on talk shows about him and Michael Caine and Oliver Reed in the '60s and the '70s. Those are some great stories. Those are
Yeah,
some awesome stories, right?
they all involve massive amounts of alcohol and women who were, let's face it, probably underage at this point. You know, they were the biggest stars in the world, and they were just lushes and libertines. And yeah, they're amazing stories. Like that's the when people talk about the height of Hollywood and that kind of thing. Like there was that whole British jet set that was way cooler and more fun.
My favorite one, I think, was he was talking about him and Michael Caine drinking in a bar in London, and they tried to close it down. They told him it was time to go. The owner wanted to leave, and so Michael Caine bought the bar, and they stayed.
Sure. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So where are we at? We're moving on to number six, right?
Yeah.
At number six, I went cheesy. I like this movie a lot because it terrifies me, man. I am truly scared of only one thing in this world, and that is snakes for some reason. And this film scared me. It was kind of like a cathartic thing to go see it in the theater. It's Anaconda from 1997, and it stars Jennifer Lopez and John Voight. It's got a big cast, actually. You know, like Eric Stoltz is in this, Ice Cube, Owen Wilson shows up. This is before he was a big deal, and it tells the story of a documentary film crew that's going down the Amazon, and they're basically uh, fighting back and forth with this giant anaconda, and they're dealing also with John Voight's character, who's kind of a secondary villain, uh, who's guiding them, but at the same time, like he's evil. So watch this dude. And great scene at the end. Like I love the John Voight death in this, and
Hmm.
like I said, for me, I was terrified of snakes, man. And so when I went and saw this in '97, I was 17 years old, and it was like one of those things where I was like, I'm gonna sit here and watch this damn movie. And I'm not, some people have to climb a mountain so they're not scared of heights. For me, I had to watch Anaconda in 1997, and Jennifer Lopez helped out a lot. I'll say that. And it grossed around 136 million, which was pretty cool because it was kind of a success, and they didn't do a lot of these type of films at that time. Now, I was gonna stay away from like creatures, and for me, I don't really consider this one to be like a supernatural creature, but I will say this: it is a significantly larger than life snake, and even though I went back and rewatched this recently, the CGI doesn't hold up great. It's at that era where they're just now doing it, and it's not really great. But at the same time, it was pretty good for the era, and the story is still very enjoyable. So at number six, I had Anaconda.
Yeah, that is a fun death. And I love whatever accent he has in that movie. He's from Germalia or something. It's a mess, but it's really fun. All right, so my number six is a kind of a southern gothic horror story called Squirm, which is all about a girl who kind of comes home to her southern family. There's an old boyfriend waiting for her. She's brought her fella home with her. And against the backdrop of this kind of genteel southern town, shit hits the fan when like a freak storm or something makes all the worms go crazy. And it's really uh it's a hard movie to describe because it's not as much of a monster movie as it sounds like the worms are for sure a problem, but so are all the problems of these characters and their relationships with one another. And so it ends up feeling like a Flannery O'Connor story, only there are worms that eat people's faces occasionally. And it's a really unique, I don't know that there's ever been a movie outside of some of the really kind of cheap and sleazy Ray Milland stuff from the 70s, like Spider Baby or something like that. It has this weird kind of slightly off tone to it that makes you feel a little grungy watching it. Uh, and it has a dude's face covered in worms as they burrow into his flesh. And, that's a good time.
Yeah, definitely a strange film, but yeah, great pick there. We're going on to where are we at? Number 5 now?
Yeah.
Made it all the way halfway through here.
Oh yeah, it's time to get real. That was
Time to get
all.
real.
That was fun. Now it's time to get serious.
I'm trying to just get hyped up to talk about my number 1 pick because it absolutely terrifies me, and I don't want to have a panic attack while I'm talking about it. It's that good.
Now I'm excited.
All right, at number 5, I have The Gray, and it's a 2011 survival film co-written, produced by Joe Carnahan. Of course, stars Liam Neeson, and this is like the first time I started paying attention to Frank Grillo, and I really like Frank Grillo now. I think he's pretty underrated. It's based on a short story called Ghost Walker by a guy named Ian McKenzie, Ian McKenzie Jeffers, and he also wrote the screenplay with Carnahan. So that lends a little bit to it. When you have the original writer working on the screenplay, that helps a lot. I like this one, man. I know it takes a bad rap because, like, I've seen a lot of people say that they don't like the fact that it villainizes wolves. I don't think that's what goes on here, though. To me, like, these wolves are pissed off because these people have been slowly invading their territory. And so when they see them out here in the open and they're like open territory, they're like, hell no, we're not having it. And I
Yeah.
think that there should be like maybe a court of law for animals, right? Sometimes there should be an argument for animals, Your Honor. You know, like what did they do wrong? Really, I mean, they didn't do anything wrong. They attacked these people, but the people should have never been there. It wasn't their fault they were there totally. But yeah, so I don't think it villainizes Canadian gray wolves in any way. But I love this movie. I love the end. It's a little. I like the cut. There's 2 cuts actually. There's a second ending that shows a little bit more, but stick with the original cut because I like it when it's ambiguous. I like it when you don't really know at the end. Uh, so yeah, this is a great film. It's not a horror film per se, but this is my argument when people bring this to me and they say, Jay, not really horror. I tell them, look, if you're in this situation, would you be terrified? Would you be horrified? Yes. And these types of movies are the movies that you actually should be scared of because at 30, 40 years old, Freddy Krueger's not coming to get you in the middle of the night. You know that Jason's probably not lurking in the woods, but there are certain places in life that if you put yourself there, you could still die. You could become food for another animal, and these animals don't care if you're an accountant or if you have a number 1 hit song. They don't care. That's where life becomes a lot more simple. And
Yeah.
that's where these and maybe serial killer films, right? Because me personally, serial killer films don't scare me because I'm 42 years old. I weigh about 250 pounds, and nobody's looking for me. There's no van looking
Not
for me.
a high risk category. Right.
Right. So I'm kind of secure with the serial killer films a little bit more than maybe if I was 19 and had blonde hair and blue eyes or something. But
Let me ask
uh,
you this though: are you a
what?
sex worker?
Am I a sex worker? Well, I'd rather not get into that on this episode because I'm
Just saying,
saving.
it's a high risk category is all.
Yes, that's right. Check out my what's it called? Fans only. Check out my fans only account, guys, and we'll. Uh,
Oh, your
anyway,
OnlyFans?
only fans. Yeah, that's what it's called. My bad. I couldn't remember. And anyway, we're talking about the gray. Uh, so yeah, that's what I had at number 5, the gray. There we go.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm with you that most times I am immensely uninterested in arguments about what is or what is not horror. If it like you said, it's like I don't know, man, being lost or being alone in the wilderness, hunted by very smart predator animals. That's close. That's pretty close. Uh, yeah, I think that's a very cool movie, and I agree. I think it ends just right. And I'm a very pessimistic person by nature, so as soon as you get that kind of hard cut at the end, I'm like, oh yeah, he's fucked.
Right.
It's done. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no. And I know there are people who are like, oh, I bet he fought him off, but that's
Uh,
those are the two kinds of people in the world, I think.
It is Liam Neeson. That's the only way I'll say it's possible because it's a movie and Liam Neeson's doing it.
Right. He looks those wolves dead in the eye. He's like, "You're about to be taken."
Right. I have a very special set of skills.
That's right. um, Oh, all right. So my number 5 here is Alligator. It is early 80s kind of monster flick. The whole idea is that and this happened, that back in the day they would just give out little baby alligators as carnival prizes. And so the movie presumes, hey, what if a little girl took one of these carnival prize alligators that usually only live for a few days? What if it ended up being flushed down the toilet in New York City and grew up real big in the sewers of New York? And grew up so big, in fact, that it started eating people that came down into the sewers. And this is a movie that was written by a guy named John Sayles, who had also written a lot of serious, like heady dramas. Probably most famous is The Return of the Secaucus Seven. Was a really big kind of indie drama in the late 70s, I believe. But he was a real deal writer and director, but he would make a little money on the side writing monster movies. And as a result, you ended up getting these giant animal movies like Alligator that were written by really clever writers. And there's actually a little bit of discussion of class in the subtext of the movie. And, it has some ideas about this idea of the disposability of nature and blah, blah, blah. But there's actual meat on the bones of alligator, not to push the pun too far, but it's a better movie than you would expect it to be. And that's kind of why I love it, because it also gives you people getting eaten by an alligator. It just happens to be a pretty good movie along the way too.
Right, and that's the old myth. Like everyone's heard that before, that there are alligators in the sewers of New York. They play right into that perfectly.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I grew up next to the St. Francis River in southeast Missouri, and I had a friend. I'm calling you out, Richard. I'm putting you on the spot. Richard McCroy. This guy had a pet alligator, and he didn't realize that his uh, aquarium thing that he had bought for it wasn't big enough that it was going to keep growing. And so he released his alligator into the St. Francis River.
Oh my
And
God.
I never swam in the St. Francis River again after that, after he told me that. I was a little aggravated with him, to be honest with you, because of this movie, getting back to the horror. But
Yeah.
um, so we're moving on. We're at number 4. And at number 4, I have The Edge from 1997. It's an American survival film directed by Lee Tamahori, and it stars Anthony Hopkins. And I'm going to stop right here for a minute just to tell you guys out there, don't define this man by Hannibal Lecter. I love Hannibal Lecter. That's one of my favorite characters of all time. But go watch other Anthony Hopkins pictures and movies that he made in the 90s and even in the early 80s and stuff, because this guy's a great actor. Don't define him by that one character, because there are some characters that lend themselves to great performances. I believe Hannibal Lecter is one of them. Also, the Joker, and maybe like Vito Corleone. There's characters like that that lend themselves to great performances if you put the right actor in there. So, I just don't. I hate it when people define Anthony Hopkins by that one performance. And
Yeah.
he is really great in this movie, along with Alec Baldwin and Harold Perrineau. And this starts off with, we have a billionaire played by Anthony Hopkins, and he's up at this cabin, in the frozen tundra or whatever, with his. I think they're up in Alaska, with his supermodel wife, played by Elle McPherson. So that's already problematic. And Alec Baldwin, who is a photographer who won't stop hitting on his supermodel wife. And so there's this whole kind of tension between the three of them throughout the first part of the movie. It's also his birthday, and there's a weird scene in here where they like surprise him for his birthday, and you start to think, as the viewer, in the back of your mind, that maybe there's something going on. Did they just try to kill this old guy? You know what I mean? You're like, what's going on here? Uh, but so that's a heavy subplot to the film, because what actually happens is Alec Baldwin wants to take a picture of this hunter that lives like 60 miles from this place where they're at. So they fly up there. When they get up there, they find out that that guy is gone bear hunting. So they think they're going to fly to where he's at and still get this picture before sundown. And of course, what we have next is a plane crash that leaves them all in the wilderness in bear country. And shout out here to Bart the Bear, man, who for like a decade and a half, if you needed a bear in Hollywood, Bart was the bear you got. Just great movies. The Bear, Legends of the Fall, White Fang, just, awesome performances from this bear. So yeah, give it up to Bart the Bear. And I love Anthony Hopkins in this one because, he's the rich guy and he's the old guy, and everybody kind of just pushes him to the side like he's quirky and he's weird. But he reads a lot of books and he's very knowledgeable. And when he gets in this situation, he is the best tool you can have because he has all this knowledge about survival in the wilderness that none of these other younger, more athletic men have. And so they have to rely on him. He becomes the alpha male and he has to get them out of the situation. Of course, I mentioned the subplot with him and Alec Baldwin. That is kind of like building tension the entire time they're out here because Alec Baldwin is really good at trying to convince Anthony Hopkins that there's nothing going on. I mean, he convinces me, I've seen it before, but he convinces me to a certain degree that there's nothing going on. And he's just really good. You don't know if he's friend or foe in the movie until the end. And yeah, great performances. Harold Perrineau, another great underrated actor that nobody talks about. He was in Lost and Oz and many other great things. So yeah, at number 4, I had The Edge from 1997.
Yeah, great movie. And David Mamet, by the way, the guy who wrote
Yes.
The Edge. Always nice to see a David Mamet joint. And my number 4 is the classiest movie I'll talk about for the rest of this. And that's Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, which is still a movie that gives me the creeps. I think that, you can make all the arguments about the dated special effects and the wires and the birds and all that kind of stuff. And that's fine. You may have that prerogative, but there is something so intensely creepy about that scene where the lead character is kind of tiptoeing through that field of birds, just praying to God that they don't all swarm. And I think the big, kind of centerpiece scene when they go after Bodega Bay and there are the explosions and the guy pounding on the phone booth that Tippi Hedren is in. It's one of the first movies that was sort of intentionally ambiguous as to why this threat existed, but it was always implicated that, or implied rather, that there was sort of a natural response, that this was one of the first kind of eco horror movies where a director was like, maybe nature is going to start pushing back on us, and this is sort of what it would look like, and it would be just as inexplicable. And I just love it. I think The Birds is it's that run of Hitchcock movies where he just couldn't not make a masterpiece, and The Birds is on that list for me. I think it's just a brilliant film.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I missed it on my list, but that is a great pick, and I agree with everything you said. I would even add that I like that it's ambiguous. So the biggest complaint I've heard about it is that people say, "Well, why are the birds doing this?" Well, nature is a mystery, man. There's a lot of things about nature we don't know, and isn't it better to just kind of realize that it's happening and not be like, "Oh, we need a scientific explanation," because I guarantee you, as soon as you add that explanation, you ruin the film, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And also it's scarier when you're like in the situation, we just have to deal with this. We'll deal with the explanation on the back end. But like you said, right now we've just got to get to safety because we're surrounded by a bunch of seagulls that want to eat us for no good
Right.
reason.
I don't want to have a conversation about science right now. I want to run.
Right. Are
Uh,
are the scientists, do they have guns? Do they have anti-seagull guns? Because that's what we need down here.
we didn't build anti-bird weaponry, so we're at their mercy at that point.
Right. We never saw it coming. That's why
We
the
never
birds are
saw it
so
coming.
sinister.
If it was a nuclear attack, we had a shelter for that, but we never saw it coming with the bird.
Yeah. Yeah. Sneaky
uh,
bastards.
I would like to see President Biden. I just to say, nothing political or whatever, but I love, I would like to see President Biden on Saturday Night Live apologizing for a bird attack. you know, that would be funny.
That
But
bird attack was a bunch of malarkey, Jack.
yeah, they had Jim Carrey playing Joe Biden on Saturday Night Live for a little while, and it was hilarious. So that's
Yeah,
the one I want to see. But
yeah.
anyway, at number three, I have Open Water. It's from 2003, and it's an American survival horror thriller film. I know this is another one where people are like, "Is it really a horror film?" Yeah, it's a horror film. It's a slow burn, but it's also kind of one of these ones that's based on a true story because this happened to some people. And the setup here is this couple goes scuba diving, and they're taken out on the water with like I can't remember. It's like 8 or 10 other people, and they're all gonna go scuba diving. But a couple of the guys start jacking around, and so the instructor tells them they're not gonna be able to go in the water. But after everyone goes in, these guys grab tanks and go in the water. So when everyone comes out, the instructor counts everyone as they come out and thinks that everyone is back on the boat because these two guys were never supposed to go over. And they leave them out in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere. And slowly, over a period of a couple of days, they are eaten by sharks. And it's terrifying. And just the loneliness and the realization that you're going to die. Like it sets in quick. You don't know if it's going to be an hour, if it's going to be 10 hours, but you're going to die. Probably nobody's coming back out here before the weekend's over and they realize you're not where you're supposed to be, and because you're on vacation, and this guy is the only one who knows where you're at in the middle of the ocean. And so yeah, it's very sad. It's very like tragic. It's hard to watch, and it is terrifying in the sense of like we've all thought about being. I mean, I think being burnt alive and probably being eaten alive are two of the worst things that could possibly happen to you, right? Hopefully, we all pass away in our sleep, but this is one of the ones where you never really think about it, how it could take place over hours, and just be spread out, and you have to be stuck in your death for hours. So yeah, it always terrified me. At number three, I have Open Water.
Yeah, that scene where the storm rolls in at night and you just see the flashes as the lightning strikes and the rain's coming down. It's just like, oh my god,
Yeah.
that would suck on such a deep level to be in that situation. And like you said, just the draining of hope as you realize, like, oh man, ain't nobody coming back.
And the
Where
fact that the person you love the most in your life is sitting right across from you in the same situation, and there's nothing you can do.
yeah, right.
Mm.
Yeah, like whatever shit you got to work out. Like I like that that's sort of the journey of those characters is there's a point where they're just like, man, none of that bullshit matters. None of the minor arguments, none of that matters when you come face to face with a situation like this.
Right.
You just kind of bond as human beings at that level. Yeah, that's a great movie. Um, kind of sort of similar and keeping with my reptiles, my number three is Rogue, which is directed by Greg McLean, who did Wolf Creek, among other films. And it is him doing a crocodile movie. And there was kind of a rash of those for a couple of years there, where like Primeval and a couple of other movies.
Blackwater. Yeah.
Blackwater, yeah. And this is really the best of the bunch because it's a director putting some characters in a confined space. They're on a tidal island, and as the water rises, eventually they will be in the water with this crocodile that has already killed a couple of people after a boat is stranded. And so it's sort of, a very contained kind of film where it's these people just trying to figure out how are we going to get to safety, and we have to be careful because this crocodile is smart. It's a predator and it knows we're here and it's just waiting for us to make a mistake, and as soon as we do, we're going to get dragged off to its lair and eaten. So there are moments when this crocodile does get hold of someone, and it's brutal and it's quick and it's vicious, and like I said, it's kind of the best of those movies that came out all on top of each other, because it felt the most grounded, and it also felt the most visceral. Like the characters in this movie get messed up by the end of this film, and it's kind of a delight. So yeah, Rogue, my number three.
Yeah, I agree with you on everything there. This is the best of those three movies that came out. It's weird that they came out together like that, and I kind of attribute it to the like Sci-Fi Channel era where they were just pounding those movies out one after the next. I don't know if they still do it or not. They probably do, but they had like Python movies, boa movies, crocodile movies out, all kinds of stuff. But these three were on the other side of that. They were, better than that production value wise, at least. And yeah, that was the best one of those three. Would like to mention all three of the movies that he talked about, though, are good. If you like these kind of movies, I would
Hmm.
definitely check out all three and choose for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a big fan of. Oh my god! Like anytime one of those characters rolls through and is like, "Don't get too close to the water, there, love. Those crocodiles, they watch you. They learn. You go down to the water the same time every day. Crocodile will get you." I love that character, and there's always that character in the movie to tell you
Right.
how terrible saltwater crocodiles are.
And there's actually a YouTube video of one. If you guys get a chance, look it up on YouTube. There's a video where they caught one in this village that is like the size of the one in this movie, and they have it on a. It looks like they built like a giant cart to put it on. Just out of just wood and whatever. And these natives all have it up on the cart, and they're having to pull it across a bridge to get it over to where they're going, and this thing just loses it. I mean, it busts the ropes, it busts the sides of the cart. It's rattling. Eventually, it quit. It got tired and just quit and laid there. And they pulled it on. And I was like, Jesus! Like, I can't imagine being. If I was there, I would have been. Please don't film me.
Yeah,
Because it would have been bad.
yeah. I mean, I would have given myself to the crocodile at a certain point. I would have been
Yeah,
like, "This is my new god."
I'm the guy that
Uh,
got ate by the crocodile on YouTube. That's.
right? Yeah. Hail crocodile. Let's go get him, crocodile.
I'm
I'm with
about to
you.
be immortal.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Anyway, yeah.
Pooped out tomorrow and immortal forever. But yeah, at number two, and this is a total cop out, but I don't mind. I'll play the game. At number two, I have Cujo from 1983. Of course, it's based on the Stephen King novel of the same name, and it was directed by Louis Teague, written by Don Carlos Dunaway and Barbara Turner, and stars Dee Wallace in probably one of the most underrated performances in horror movie history. Woman should have been at least nominated for an Oscar for this performance. Also stars Daniel Hugh Kelly and Danny Pinataro. And of course, the film is about a mother and son who are trapped inside their car while a vicious rabid Saint Bernard covered in blood attacks them. And I love the book because the book makes me not. The book kind of makes me feel sorry for Cujo. I love dogs, and there's some stuff in the book where you kind of feel like Cujo wants to be good, but he can't. It's just not possible at this point. And it talks about how he always wanted to be a good boy and be a good pet to his master and stuff like that. But in the movie just kind of like for me personifies fear. And one thing I've heard from people is it's too slow, this and that. Well, they set up those characters in the beginning a little bit. Maybe you could argue it's too much for a visual telling of the story. But I think that if whether you like that or not, man, once you get 20 minutes into this film, it's full on fear, it's full on horror, and this dog is terrifying. And I love dogs. I can't imagine being a person who is already terrified of dogs watching a movie like this. And yeah, it's a great film in my opinion. I understand why people hate on that first part of the film a little bit. I guess that works better in the book for people, but uh, yeah, for me, it's like Alien. It's one of those films that when I think about the word fear, I picture that movie poster, and that's why I had Cujo at number two.
Here's the thing I love about these lists is that they are entirely different, and I totally agree with every pick.
Right.
Um, my number two, though, here's where things get dicey on my list. This is where we separate the wheat from the chaff. My number two is Day of the Animals. What's scarier than one animal attacking you? What about every animal? That's what this movie dares to ask. And it stars Leslie Nielsen before he had his comedy, sort of renaissance. And so he's playing a serious role, and it's hard to take him seriously because Leslie Nielsen was such a brilliant comedic actor in all those Naked Gun movies and whatnot, and Airplane, of course. And so this is pre all that. And Leslie Nielsen is one of a group of hikers that are going through, like the California Rockies or something. And because of the ozone layer depleting, the animals all go people crazy, and no matter what animal it is, they want to eat people. And so there are snakes and mountain lions and chickens and every animal, vultures, hilariously at one point. The effects are not very good, but it has a really apocalyptic vision of what would happen if animals just rose up against people. And it has this kind of great crescendo moment at the end of the film where they roll into town. They finally get out of the mountains and get into town. And everybody's fucking dead there too. And it's just the best. So yeah, it's is it a good movie? Not necessarily. Do I love it? Absolutely. It is absolutely my number 2 movie for this list.
Yeah, I like serious Leslie Nielsen, and he's been in horror quite a bit. You know, he was in Prom Night, he was in Creep Show 2.
Mm-hmm.
He did a great episode of Night Gallery from the 70s that I absolutely love. It's one of the best in the whole series. But we
If
are moving. What now?
Oh, I was just going to add, if you're interested in Leslie Nielsen in these kinds of movies, he has to fight a bear for a human woman in this film. And again, that's
Not funny.
entertainment.
It's not supposed to be funny, right?
Oh, no, no, no. It is
Very
not.
serious.
But he takes off his shirt and is like, she's mine.
Oh, wow.
It fights a bear with a stick. It's terrific.
I don't think I've seen this one, man. I'm going to have to check it out,
You,
actually.
yes, you must.
All right, we made it down to number 1, and I promised something truly terrifying. And as always, I'm probably not going to deliver for most people, but for me, this is a personal thing. At number 1, I have Backcountry from 2014, and it's a Canadian nature survival horror film that, yes, is kind of based on a true story, loosely based on the true story of a hungry man-eating bear that attacked Mark Jordan and Jacqueline Perry in the backcountry of Missinaba Lake Provincial Park, north of Chapleau, Ontario, in 2005. Yes, I got all that. Events for which Mark later received the Star of Courage Award from Governor General Michel Jean. Now, this movie is terrifying to me because of one scene. And I know that it draws a little complaint from some people because uh, it's really slow. It's a slow burn, right? But that's what happens when you get lost in the woods. It's kind of a slow burn. It doesn't just happen, like I took one step and I was lost. Uh, it's a slow burn, but this couple goes, camping, and it's everything that it's going to be from the start. I won't deny that. She wants to take the cell phone. She wants to take the bear mace. And the guy is acting like it's wounding his, precious ego or pride or whatever. So he tries to talk her out of taking anything that will help them if they get lost, right? And swears up and down he knows this part of the country. He's hiked through all of it when he was a kid, and he wants to take her to this special place so he can propose to her. But the first thing that happens is they run into somebody in the woods, uh, and you kind of wonder if, like, the first time you see this movie, you kind of wonder, like, where is this going? You're like, is this? Are we supposed to be afraid of this guy too, or what? And you realize later on that this guy it was just a warning. Yeah, he was brushing up against the other guy's ego, but it was a warning to him. Like, dude, you really don't know where you're at, do you? And you really don't understand the situation you might put yourself and this woman in. But of course, being the jackass that he is, he goes further into the woods with his girlfriend until they finally take the wrong fork at the wrong point and they get totally lost. And it's around this time they start to hear noises and notice that something is tracking them. Unfortunately, they don't pick up on what to do fast enough. This guy acts like he's never been in the woods in his life. And, they just set up camp in the middle of the woods and, right on the ground. And they go to sleep, and what ensues is one of probably for me like the most terrifying moment in horror movie history since The Exorcist. Because when I see it, I just picture myself in that situation and know that like, I'm a big guy. There's a lot of guys I could fight off. There's a lot of situations I could get myself out of. But knowing when I watch that scene that just if that happened to me, I'm done. I'm eaten. I'm gonna be eaten by a bear, and that sucks. You know what I mean? And in the movie, the dude is straight up eaten alive by a bear on film. They don't move the camera. They don't try to sugarcoat it. You see this guy scream like a bitch and be eaten by an animal just like any of us would in that situation. And the rest of the film is about her trying to survive and keep from suffering the same fate. And she's a little bit smarter than her boyfriend was, so she's able to maneuver different situations and landmarks and stuff like that to get away from the bear. But it's just a terrifying movie, man. That just there could ever be a film made from one scene in my mind, it's this movie, and that's why I have Backcountry at number one.
Yeah, I like my bear movies, as you will soon learn, and Backcountry is a really good one. It doesn't make my list because it really is just the one scene that is like the centerpiece as far as it being a really great animal attack movie. Uh, but that scene is amazing. And yes, it is absolutely horrifying, and I totally get it. My number one is also a bear movie, although it is a different one. It is the original film Grizzly, which is what happens when a movie studio said, "What if Jaws but a bear?"
Yeah.
And it is one of the closest ripoffs you will ever see to Jaws. It's got all the same characters. You got the sheriff, only he's more of a park ranger because it's a bear. There's the bear expert with the glasses. This one has a little bit more of a romance angle with the lady. And then you have the grizzled old Vietnam veteran helicopter pilot. And it is amazing. And I will spoil it right now. The end of this movie is them using a bazooka to blow up that bear. And it's one of the greatest things that's ever happened on film. It is a permanent source of joy for me. I love the movie Grizzly so much. It is a total ripoff of Jaws, but it's got Christopher George, hangovering his way through the movie. Richard Jekyll, who is one of my favorite kind of character actors of that era, plays the Matt Hooper, Richard Dreyfuss part in it as the bear expert. And I can't think of the guy's name now who plays the pilot, but he's so good. Because he has one of those, it's not quite the USS Indianapolis speech, but it's totally a ripoff of that about Vietnam. Oh, it's so good. Everything about it is so blatantly a ripoff of Jaws, but it's just right. They make all the right bad choices. And I love it so much. So yes, I can watch Grizzly anytime. In fact, I may watch it just because I've invoked its name now.
I'm a big fan of ripoff movies. I like it when they do it pretty good. You know what I mean? When
it was really good the first time. You do it close enough the second time,
right?
Still totally okay with it as it happens.
I'm a Leviathan guy. Yeah, I like this thing, and I love Alien, but I'll watch Leviathan on a Sunday afternoon.
Oh, I'll go with Deep Star 6 if I gotta.
Right. But yeah, great pick. Have you seen the sequel that they just put out recently, the Grizzly 2?
I have the movie that answers the question, can you make a whole movie with stock footage?
Right. But
it's
I know everybody was excited for it anyway, right?
It was a curiosity for sure, but it just turns out that they didn't have a real movie. And they just try to stitch it all together with stock footage to try to make it some kind of story. But the second time you see those bear cubs wrestling, and you're like, you're reusing stock footage, not just using stock footage, you're reusing stock footage. Yeah, it's embarrassing, but it was interesting to watch because I'd always wondered, can you make a movie out of
Right.
just stock footage? And it turns out no.
And they had some stuff with Charlie Sheen and George Clooney and stuff like that, so they could put that on the cover of the
Yeah.
box and try to sell it. You remember like the '90s, man? When the '90s were like a savage wasteland when it came to them trying to sell you movies. They would put stuff on a box and it would say McQueen versus Stallone. And you'd look at the movie, and then real tiny underneath it, it would say Chad McQueen and Frank Stallone. And you're like, son
Yeah.
of a bitch. What the
Or they,
heck?
it's starring Corbin Burnson, who was in this movie for 5 minutes at the end.
Yeah, I hate it when they do that too. When they show up one time and you're like, ah, yeah, I guess he was in it. $10,000 for 2 days. That was a good haul for him.
Yeah. Yeah. There's part of me that is kind of fine with the circus of that sort of movie making. There's a whiff of William Castle to that I can still appreciate, of like, hey, come see, Frank Stallone. Uh,
Right.
there's a hucksterism to it I like, but yeah, it is a little cynical for sure. Like, you're not gonna get a great movie. It's weird because my number one pick is a movie that should feel entirely cynical, and kind of does, but it also feels like everybody was kind of trying to make a good movie, and
So,
the bear attacks are good.
I mean, you know about movie making and stuff like that, and it's one of those things where it's like, I have a lot of horror icons that I love, and so I don't mind spending $20 to watch a bad movie they're in because I love them. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah,
And
sure.
so you probably agree with me too that there's a way to do anything right. And I've seen some movies where they had Robert Englund in them for like 7 minutes, or they had Tony Todd for like 5 minutes, and in your mind you're like, okay, Robert flew in, he got a hotel room, he shot 6 hours one day, 4 hours the next day, and he took, he got 10, 15,000 and went home, and that's great. It's good that like my horror icons from a kid, that they're not broke, that they can do that. I'm happy with that, but a lot of people don't know how to make it work, and it looks like a cut and paste type situation, right? Where you're
Yes.
pasting this person into a bad horror movie. But some people have done it and it works out. So I never hate on anything until I've watched it, right?
Yeah. Like, well, we it with Lost After Dark, the movie I wrote, we had Robert Patrick for a couple of days. It was that exact scenario. Fly up to Canada, be in this movie a little bit, and what you try to do is you pepper them all through the movie, so it doesn't feel like, oh, we just had him for a couple of days, so
Right.
here's one scene. And I felt like we got away with it pretty well.
I,
But you're right. Some movies, or you're just like, oh, he just sat in that chair and you put a camera on him, and then as soon as you called cut, he was out the door and done. You
right.
know?
I hate it when it's a scene where Tony Todd's like he's the sheriff that's pulled them over, and his entire
Yeah,
part of the movie is that scene where he just questions them about where they're going or something. I hate that.
yeah. It's
You
the Hatchet effect.
you guys nailed it. You know, that's one of your movie that you were talking. What's it called? Lost in the Dark. I know I've seen it it's from like 5 or 6 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lost
Yeah,
After Dark. Yeah,
Lost After Dark. It had Robert Patrick in it, and it's pretty good, guys. Go check it out. Like, there's a way to do slasher films these days where it doesn't just have to be straight up homage, homage, homage. Like, oh, we're throwing everything at that you've seen from everywhere at the screen. They do an homage with this film, but they do their own thing too, and it works. I liked it a lot. I remember recommending it to a lot of people when it came out.
thanks, man. Yeah, you try. It's a low budget slasher movie for sure, but you try to have a couple of things up your sleeve, and there's definitely nods to movies, but it's not just slasher stuff. Like, there is a blatant Lucio Fulci ripoff in that movie that I could not be prouder of.
Well, I was talking to a guy the other day who was talking about that movie Terrifier with Art the Clown,
Yeah.
and he's talking about, look, there's two arguments for that being not great or whatever, and there's one I will listen to. The one where people say, "Oh, it's not good. It's just a bad movie." Well, I'm like, I kind of don't listen to that, because to me that movie intends to be bad. And so if you're not watching it like through that lens, maybe you're not getting it. And but the other, I would say that is a decent argument. against it is that it just throws too much homage. It's too much homage to 80s slashers without, Art just kind of doesn't. He doesn't talk. He doesn't. I'm like, yeah, but I like it. And there's always the argument about the gun, him using the gun, and I always tell people I love that because nobody else does it, and that's the moment where they don't do everything that everybody else has done, right?
Yeah.
But
I
anyway,
was yeah, I was one of those people that was not crazy about Terrifier. I totally get it. People who really enjoy the movie, I totally get it. It was just not for me. And it's not because I think it's too much of an homage movie or anything like that. It was just a little too nihilistic for me. I'm getting old.
right,
It's not that I want every horror movie to be nice and comforting at the end, but there was just a real spirit of kind of maliciousness to that movie. And I get it, man. I was 22 once too.
right, yeah,
I
it's
totally
fun.
understand it. Right.
It's fun,
I 100% get it. I would have loved that movie 15 years ago.
right.
And these days I'm just like, I'm more interested, I think, in I'm less interested in being shocked than I am being shown something that I haven't seen before. And I don't mean like a splatter solution to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when it,
Like I want somebody to be creative with what they do with horror these days.
when that one originally came out, I gave it like 6 out of 10. And I said, it's not good, but if you like bad horror movies, if you can watch it, from that, because a lot of times that's what I do. I'm not a critic. I'm just a guy who recommends movies. And so when I'm watching a horror movie, sometimes I'll be like, okay, I'm going to shut the part of my brain. I'll know like I'm not into this, right? So I'll shut that part of my brain off, and I'll be like, who is? And I'll focus on the audience for that movie. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of what happened to me with Terrifier, where I was like, okay, I get it. I get who it's for and everything. And, it's not
Absolutely.
necessarily my preference, but I get who it's for. And so
Oh yeah.
it's one of those stupid movies though that I've ended up having to argue for. I'm like, I gave it 6 out of 10. Why am I arguing about this movie with you? You know what I mean? Crazy movies like that you end up arguing for over and over again. But we went. I thought it was great. We had a good time. We went a little off the rails there, but we're only at an hour and 7 minutes, so people can deal with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I had so much fun. This again, I was really looking forward to this, and I was really bummed when we had to push it the first time because I was like, oh, I really wanted to do it, and I had just as much fun as I'd hoped. I hope I didn't ruin your show.
Oh man, we had a great time. I really enjoyed you being on here, and I was I'd listened to some of your stuff on YouTube and stuff like that, so I was already I knew kind of what I was getting into with you, and yeah, I was excited about you being on because you seem like a really smart guy who knows his movies and knows what the hell he's talking about. And you can't always count on that when it comes to certain co-hosts, but I was very excited to have you on, and we're gonna put all your information in the description below, guys. Cruise down there, check out everything that Bo's doing, and man, thanks for being on. It was a blast.
Absolutely, and please come on and do some stuff on some of the Legion shows anytime you want.
Absolutely, shoot me a an email or a message whenever you see something that looks like it might be ready right for me.
I absolutely will, man.
All right, guys, that's all we've got for this episode, and we will talk to you as always the next time we've got something worth talking about. Bye.